Hi, I'm Eric Ostro, host of Live at the Lortel. For season 4, we continue our focus on art and activism. Why do off-Broadway artists uplift certain causes, and how do those causes make them the artists they are today? And while we gather virtually, we'd like to recognize that we occupy land stolen from Indigenous people. Join us in acknowledging this history and consider our role in reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship. Good evening, everybody. My name is Eric Ostro. Welcome to Live at the Lortel. We're going to get right to it this evening. I'm very excited for our guest, but first, I want to bring on my co-host and dear friend, John Andrew Morrison.
Well, hello, Eric Ostro.
Hello, my darling. How are you?
Doing? I'm good. I'm John Andrew Morrison. He, him, his. Shall I do a little visual description right now?
Yes, please. I'll do mine after you.
I'm an African-American gay man. I would say slightly handsome, and I'm sitting on my high sofa in my living room here in New York City. And you?
I am a Caucasian gay male. I have brown hair. I'm wearing brown glasses. I'm sitting in my office den. And my pronouns are him and what's the...
He, him, his.
He, him. Yeah, correct. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. I'm going to give a nice intro to our guest, Jessica Stone. Jessica Stone worked as an actress on and off Broadway in television and in film before transitioning to directing. Her directing career began in earnest with her all-male 2010 production of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum for the Williamstown Theater Festival. She is the director of the Broadway musical Kimberly Akimbo, which started off-Broadway at the Atlantic Theater. Jessica is passionate about mentoring young theater artists, gun safety, and helping unregistered and low-propensity voters to participate in our democracy. Please welcome our incredibly talented guest, Jessica Stone.
Hello.
We are so happy to have you. We've been trying a while. It didn't work out last year, but welcome today. We're really happy to have you in our home.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm glad I could finally be here. I know last year we tried and things got crazy, and so it's nice to see your faces.
Well, you were a little busy. So I'd like to start there, actually, as what you were working on for the past few years, Kimberly Akimbo, which I saw at the Atlantic, and then luckily moved to Broadway, where it got rave reviews.
Yeah. I saw it a couple of weeks ago on Broadway. It really is it's tremendous.
Thank you.
I remember, I think it was in 2001 with Lindsay Abair's first take on the show, starring Mary Louise Burke. Yes. I remember walking out of that theater in tears, and how did this come to you? How did this play, Kimberly Akimbo, become a musical, and how did you get involved?
Great question. I do want to start by saying, I'm just for the viewers, I'm a Caucasian female, and I'm wearing gold glasses, and I have brown hair, and I'm wearing a red shirt, and I'm sitting in this little nook in my house in front of a map of Paris. Where well, I met David Lindsay Abair. I think it was 2017. This is the boring part, figuring out someone going through their brain, figuring out the year. But I was directing a play of his, Ripcord, in Boston. And I knew he was a Boston boy, and I wanted to do right by him. And we have the same agent. And so I reached out to see if I could have coffee with him because I wanted to make sure that, there was stuff in there that mattered to him, and I wanted to make sure that I was honoring it. And we just got on really, really well at that coffee. I fell just madly in love with him. We just gossiped and laughed and chattered, and I just loved him. And so, and I remember at the at that coffee, we were talking about casting of Ripcord, and he mentioned that he was going to be going to Sundance to do this musical adaptation of Kimberly Akimbo with Janine. And I remember gasping and just thinking, oh my God, that play, it sings. That's such a great idea. I love that play. Never really imagining that I was connected to it. I just was thinking about Ripcord. And then he came to Boston to the opening of Ripcord. And again, we had a ball. I had spent all these weeks with this company of beautiful actors and ended up spending all of opening night with David. We just had a blast. I loved him. And so apparently when this came around, once he and Janine, they really wanted to do this a different way than typically happens. They just wanted to work the two of them with nobody else breathing down their necks, and form this little story between the two of them before any eyes came into the picture. There were no early directors, no producers, nothing. David Stone, they brought it to David Stone, who's the producer, who I've also have known for years, when they were ready to share. And then I think the conversation began between David Stone and David Lindsay-Abaire. I didn't know Janine. And they invited me to a reading that they presented, that David and Janine basically had directed. And then it sort of went from there. And it's been about 4 years of just a really, really gratifying collaboration. I just couldn't adore the two of them more. And David Stone as well, who's been a really beautiful shepherd to the project. But David and Janine and I, and Danny Mefford, a choreographer, who's a gorgeous dramaturg in his own right, we just really got on like a house on fire. And that has been the most rewarding part of this process, is that we can look at something on stage and we all, 90% of the time we'll look at a moment and go, oh, that's too saccharine, put a little lemon juice in there. Or like, oh, it's too, we're getting dark. We got to like melt some hearts here. Usually our eyes, we have similar outlooks in the world, and we have similar taste in the theater.
Yeah. There was something about it that, it was so deftly handled. Because there are these moments of just like very casual throwaway cruelty that I was like, whoa. And like, they just kind of like happen. And then you see this child absorb it and like still decide to move on. So it's really wonderfully handled the whole way through. Your work on it is really
Thank
spectacular.
You.
Yeah.
Well, it is. It's a funny thing. Those parents are tricky because they're not villains. They really love their daughter. They're just bad at it.
Yeah. They're doing the best they can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And so in terms of the cast, what I wanted to say was, you have a woman of a certain age, you have Victoria Clark playing this teenager girl who's supposed to be, she has this disease where she grows up, but she ages. So she's supposed to be, 71 or 72, somewhere around there. And this young man, as 19, what was incredible to me was their chemistry on stage together and the way they melded and formed this beautiful relationship that ordinarily you would say, oh my God, what, but Vicky is so extraordinary that she transforms into this 16 or 17-year-old girl, and this young man how lucky he was that he gets to work with Victoria Clark every night and form this relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk about the it can be very delicate on one side and very scary on one side, and on the other side extremely beautiful and wonderful to watch.
Thank you. Yes. Well, it's been really great working with both of those actors. Vicky is she is such facility, and she has so much access to so much, emotionally and intellectually, and she's also really funny, which is a sort of, I think, underappreciated gift of hers. She's really, really funny. And she comes with so much experience and so much skill, and she's so disciplined. She's an incredibly her work ethic is really gorgeous to behold. And Justin, who is 19, I think he's actually 20 now, but he plays 16. And when we first started working with him, he was 18 and then freshly turning 19. But he, when you're telling a story where we have to believe that this older woman is a teenager, it means that we have to actually have teenagers on stage. We have to have other people there as a reference that are actual teens. You can't have 27-year-olds playing teens, And so to have Justin next to her and that sweet, almost tabula rasa energy that cannot be created by someone in their late 20s. What happened was he was able to study her skill and her facility, and she was able to study what is just naturally there right in front of her face. This young man with his entire life ahead of him. And both of those things sort of washed over the other throughout the rehearsal process. And I think they both really evolved and blossomed in a way that was beautiful and fortunate. The other thing about that relationship in the play and in the show and the story that's so beautiful is it's not exactly they fall in love. That's where you would maybe get a little creeped out. It's actually that they fall in like. It's a very deep, profound friendship. And so I think we're able to, and we had to really watch that and monitor the evolution of that friendship. And so, initially the impulse when she sings Anagram and she's sort of watching him solve this puzzle. Yeah. She doesn't fall in love with him. The song ends with her saying, "I like you." And it allows us to not, it allows us to not say things that are not intended.
Right.
And that it actually is two people who are sort of on the margins who really see each other and hear each other and experience each other. It's very deep love, but it's not just, we have a crazy crush on each other, and it's not.
No. It's deeper than that. It's like when you meet a soulmate friend, when you can see each other's hearts, those friends that you have for the rest of your life. And when she's singing that song, I was sitting so close. You just saw her as he figures this puzzle out, and you watch her fall for him, not in that way, but in just, she says, "You can see me."
Yeah.
And I can see you. And that was a piece of magic.
Yeah. Well, some of it is that she's also solving a puzzle herself.
Right.
She's watching him and trying to figure him out,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also, I mean, it's just the issue of time. She doesn't have time to waste, and like wanting to experience and a kiss is a wonderful thing to experience. And
Yeah.
I think there was such a beautiful moment in the show, just because it's like I don't have time to wait around for this to happen. And so yeah, it was sad but so life affirming, the play.
Yeah.
What do you want people to take away from the show?
Well, the thing that I hope people experience is this sense of that any given moment in a life is, you don't have pain without, you don't have beauty without ugliness. You don't have pain without pleasure. And that you don't have laughter without tears. And sometimes it all happens at the same time.
Yeah.
And so that, at least that's how I experience life. And that's how I experience this story. And it's how I've watched David and Janine experience life. And so it was really important to me that it doesn't feel like it's just simply an abusive family,
Right.
or,
Right.
or
Yes.
that it's, just hard on your sleeve, go get them, kids. Like
Yeah.
that it actually is, at any given time when you're in the middle of great pain, you can laugh really, really deeply and experience something incredibly beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I think for that's the actual definition of life affirming. That actually is life.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I think that was the thing for me that I just loved, was she was like, I gotta go. I love you all, but I don't have time. I gotta go have this great adventure.
Yeah.
Because and accepting all of it, accepting them for who they are, and all of it. It really, it's quite something. I'm just wondering, when we talked to you before, you're also a fan of musical theater. Did you fangirl out at all the first time you met Vicki Clark? Because I think
Here's the thing. I'm a fan of all theater. I was raised from the time I was very little. I would come to New York and visit my dad. My parents were divorced, and my mom basically raised me in Rochester. She did a beautiful job.
She sure did, yeah.
But I mean that for her, not for me. But my dad lives in New York, and so I would spend vacations and summers with him, and he would take me to see everything. So in any given visit, I would see Baryshnikov at New York City Ballet,
Wow.
and see Love for Three Oranges at the Met, and Andre Serban's Trojan Women, and Annie. So it was, he took me to see everything.
Wow.
And my visits were always that. So I love all kinds of theater. I love all kinds of art. I mean, most people do. That's a really dumb thing to say, but when I first met Vicki, I was working with her. So I was girl, like we were in How to Succeed together. I replaced Mullally.
Right.
Yeah, you were Rosemary.
I was Rosemary. I was there in the interim between Megan and Sarah Jessica Parker. And Vicki was Smitty. And actually, when I first auditioned for it, I was auditioning for Smitty and Vicki. So we worked together, and she's so tired of me telling this story, but I had a friend in the audience who can attest to what happened. She and I got laughing about something on stage, and I have never just completely dropped everything and just bent over in half and laughed out loud on stage. Same with Vicki, and we're the only people. We just did that. Something happened, and everything stopped, and we just bent over.
So you don't remember what it was?
Well, we have different memories of what triggered it.
Okay.
I think I told her a funny story in the wing, and it made her laugh, and she came out, and then she started laughing, and it made me laugh, but she has a different interpretation of it. So that's my background with Vicki, but I do fangirl with her now because we knew each other back in the day, and we cracked up on stage, and she was like had a teething baby, and I, like it was a different time. And now in rehearsals, I look at her and I think, oh my God, this woman and what she's done and the work that she's done and the work that she's doing in front of my face right now is really something to behold. I feel that way a lot with pretty much every single person in the company. And I check in with it every couple of weeks because, you want to make sure that everybody's, it's funny how things can, especially a show like this, that's so about the detail and so about the human behavior, it can, start to evolve in funny ways. So I just want to make sure we're checking in and taking care of it. And it's such a beautiful company of actors. And each time I go to see it, I look at somebody new and I just can't believe how grateful I am to be working with, Nina White, who plays Teresa, or Justin Cooley, or Ali Mozzie, or Bonnie,
Bonnie.
Every show there's somebody new that I just fall in love with really again.
Those entrances of Bonnie, oh my gosh, she had like 2 entrance laughs that were brilliant.
Yeah,
and she played them to the hilt.
You take the hilarity of the ant, and you bring, mischief you throw the mischief and the corruption into the play. And I mean, I'd say what I was going to say before is that many of these young artists are making their Broadway debut. So that in itself is so incredible. And when you watch Vicky connect with these young artists, I just keep saying that I kept forgetting that Vicky was an adult.
Yeah.
She captures the innocence and the positivity and the seize the day, which is something that, I mean, it was a long time ago when I saw the first iteration of this play when it wasn't a musical. And I was so sad when I left that theater. And Mary Louise Burke was so incredible in that show. Yes. But there seems to be more hope in this iteration, and the seize the day and remember that to live every moment to the last degree. And that's the message I got from this show. There's so much hope.
Yeah. Well, it's David Lindsay-Abaire he has said, and he said it repeatedly, that he thinks this iteration is better, and that the score not only grounds it in tone in a way that he's so pleased with, but it's such an opportunity, when you have people singing, it's such an opportunity to hear their thoughts. And so, it can't help but enrich the experience of the story, because we have insight into more people.
I can't help thinking what a gift for those young, the young actors making their Broadway debuts to be able to work with someone like Vicky Clark, who has accomplished these great things. And you can tell there is a generosity of spirit that she has and a humility. And what a lesson by example for them. I think that's only going to benefit their careers as a great example of how to be a working actor.
Let me tell you something, on and off stage. I mean, it's not just how generous she is as an actor on stage and the amount that she gives every single night. There is no phoning it in. We say, now I'm going to say it wrong. I think we call her No Marky Clarky. She really, again, her work ethic is unrivaled. And backstage, her thoughtfulness and, she really keeps in mind the spirit of a company and what's necessary. And she's very aware of who needs what at any given moment, sometimes to a fault, sometimes to the point where it's like, okay, now I need you to concentrate on you for a minute. And, breathe and rest and recharge. And
Right. Right.
but yes, I think it is. And then, like, we have a note session, and there comes Ms. Clark with her notepad and her pencil, ready to write it down and remember it and write it in her script. And that is an example to the younger generation. She now, if I'm emailing some notes, she's the first one to email me back, say, got them, thanks. But, she really is, she's very special that way. And I think you're right. It's a beautiful experience for a first job.
Yeah.
Wow.
You definitely take that with you. And the next group that some of these people will be working with have a lot to live up to.
Yeah, they sure do.
I'm wondering, so you saw a lot of theater, but when did you get the performing bug where you're like, "Ooh, I want to do that." And how did that begin for you and develop into this really quite a fabulous acting career? You worked at the highest level. Like, how did that all begin?
It wasn't Andres Urban's Trojan Women. I was 7 and saw a naked lady in a wagon and was standing in a room and was kind of freaked out.
I bet you were.
I think I would love to see it now. It was Annie. It was Annie. I just wanted to be that girl.
Yeah, me too.
And then it was Chorus Line and, all those, oh God. So I went to a high school. I went to the School of the Arts in Rochester, New York, where I grew up. And I worked professionally at Jiva Theater and, in Rochester. And then I went to college. I went to Barnard College, and I was there for a couple of years, and I wasn't totally happy. And I was taking a couple of acting classes, and I majored in, I was declaring a major in history. And I just was feeling restless. I just wasn't, and it was not about Barnard. It was about me. And a friend of mine that I just was in this Shakespeare class with, she had an agent and she was leaving the agent and she wanted to smooth the waters. I don't know who does that or how that happened, but that's how it happened. So she introduced me to the agent that she was leaving. And they're like, all right, we'll try you out. And I didn't know what was going on. I was 19. And the first thing I auditioned for, it was a sitcom, and I tested for it. They flew me to LA and I tested for it and I didn't get it. And they flew me back, and I just in time for my Italian midterm or whatever. And then my agent at the time said, or this woman said, we're going to sign you. And so by the end of my sophomore year, I thought, I think if I got any job, I would bail on everything going on here at Barnard. Wow. So I left after my sophomore year. I babysat for a couple of months and worked at H&H Bagels in the shipping department.
Oh, amazing.
I booked.
Love H&H, yeah.
Love H&H. Yeah. And I booked this national tour of Bye Bye Birdie with Tommy Tune and Ann Reinking, and it was directed by Gene Sachs. And
I saw that in Louisville. Yeah.
You did? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was Ursula the Screamer. And that was it. And then I just started working, and I loved it. I was lucky enough to tour and work regionally and work on Broadway and do television and film and do commercials and voiceovers. Like, I loved it. I met my husband this way. Like, I met some of my best friends, and then I got to a certain point where and honestly, in Bye Bye Birdie, I had an argument with Gene Sachs, and I was 20, about the costumes in the telephone. He was showing her sexuality too soon. That was for a lot of living.
I'm sorry. I can't believe you got to fight with Gene Sachs.
Wow. And he said at the time, he said, you should probably direct. He was blowing me off, and I was annoyed. And, I loved Gene. I loved him. So, years later, I hit a point where it's like, I don't love my downtime as an actress. I don't know what to do with myself, and I want to be of use, and I'm not loving this. And And my husband, he was my boyfriend at the time, but he said, why don't you see if you can assist some of our friends who are directors and just you'll be in the process and so I started in my downtime assisting Joe Mantello, who's a dear friend and mentor, but more than anything, a dear friend. Nikki Martin, who was a dear friend and mentor and everything to me, everything. David Warren, Christopher Ashley. And I didn't really think I was directing or gonna direct. I just loved being a part of the process and learning about the process from the other side of the table.
So I'm going to interrupt. So like so for the people that are listening, to be an assistant director is what? I mean, you obviously sit with the director during the show and you tell me what.
Yes, you sit during rehearsals really, and you watch, especially if you're an actor and you're on the other side of the table, where a director sits behind the table with the team and you watch and, block it and rehearse moments. And if you're an actor, you don't ever get to stand outside of it and watch all these other people's processes. And I started observing, how directors collaborate with their set designer and their lighting designer and the sound designer and stage management. And, I didn't really know about that part of the process. And I started to really dig it. And I also started feeling as I was getting a little bit older that I just wanted to tell more of the story, that my little sliver wasn't as satisfying. And I was lippy. I was insufferable to some people, I'm sure. And I apologize. I just was ready to participate in more of the story. And so one day, Nikki Martin said to me, hey, I'm going to do Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum at Williamstown this summer. He had been running Huntington and then he left and he was running Williamstown. And I want you to be in it. And I was like, I don't want to be in that dumb show. And who am I? I'm not the hottie, and I don't think I'm the shrewish wife yet. Like, yuck. And then I really started thinking about it, and I was like, why do I hate that show? And I thought, and by the way, now I freaking love that show. But I was like, why do I hate that show? And I said, well, it's because all of these tropes. It was all of these men writing for men playing women. And that's why I hate them. So those tropes, they're not really real. And I don't want to play any of it. And that's why I hate it. And I said, you know what you need to do, Nikki? You should do an all-male version. And that way you sort of neutralize the sexism because it's a bunch of boys playing in a playground, basically. And let them have their tropes. And that's how you should do it. That's how they did it in Rome. So that's how you should do it. And he said, well, you do it. And so he gave me my first opportunity, which was directing on the main stage of Williamstown.
Wow.
And I loved it and learned how arrogant I was because I and it's one of the best constructed books of a musical. It's and that score only elevates the whole evening. Like it's a really, really fantastic show. So that was and then I sort of got bit by the bug.
Yeah. Is there anything from acting that you informs you as a director? No or no?
Yes. I think as an actor, language is your first way in. And so as a director, language is my first way in. And often music is your first way in as an actor, and music tends to be my first way in as a director. I don't necessarily immediately look at something and visualize it right away. I get there in a while, but usually language and music is for me my key. And I think that is often the case for actors. In terms of communicating with actors, I think I would like to think that because I spent decades doing it, I understand the sort of quirks of a rehearsal process. I understand the fatigue of tech. I understand the noise around mounting a show and people starting to watch it and press and how that can get in your head. I understand a lot of different kinds of sabotaging processes that actors, do to themselves.
Yeah.
And I also have discovered my limitations. And, I went into it. This was now, this was 2010 when I started directing and thought, oh, I'm going to know how to communicate with actors. And I think I do. And sometimes I don't, and the thing that was so interesting, Joe Mantello, I remember, said this to me when I started directing, and it has always stuck with me, that when you're an actor, you hit a moment and it's so hard and you're just stuck. You can't see what it's supposed to be. Walk 2 feet behind the rehearsal table, behind the table where the director sits, and look at it, and the clouds part. You know exactly what it's supposed to be. And so I think it's really important to remember as an actor that it can be that easy as stepping out and looking at it. The solution can be that easy. And I think it's really important as a director to remember that 2 feet in front of you, it's actually that hard. Because it requires a bit of grace, because you're using different parts of your instrument. You're as storytellers when you're a director and when you're an actor. And so it requires patience and grace from everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, Jessica, do you have obviously you learned, you got thrown to the wolves, right? And it turned out to be an incredible production. You're all male. Funny thing happened on the way to the forum. And then slowly but surely the snowball rolled and you were working regionally, etc. But in terms of your process as a director and how you talk to actors and how you collaborate with, the person who wrote the music and your scenic designer and your costume designer. You seem to have created that on stage, this incredible ensemble with Kimberly Akimbo. But in the real life as a director, what is for the people watching who want to be directors, what advice do you have what does your process involve as being a director?
Oh, that's a great question and a hard question, because there's no handbook, and it's
Right.
no two productions are the same.
Exactly.
And so it's hard to even say, well, this is my process, because it changes, and different collaborators. I'm working on another a new musical right now. It's an adaptation of the book Water for Elephants. It's a musical adaptation, and there's circus and puppetry, and
Great.
our score is written by this group of 7. It's the Pigpen Theater Company, so it's 7 guys, and Rick Ellis is the book writer, and we don't want it to look massive, we want it to feel humble, but it's a little bit like ducks look like they're gliding along, but they're really swimming quickly underneath the water.
Right.
It's a massive undertaking, because there's so many departments, and there are so many different artists contributing to the story. The thing that has in common with Kimberly is a desire and a love to play in the sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
And so I care a lot about people not collaborating in silos, that that we're all checking in with each other and weighing in and contributing, and I care. This sounds so. I'm almost afraid to say it, because then it's going to be on YouTube forever. But I care a lot about love. I care a lot about.
I don't think that's corny at all.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of is. We have to be a little mean too, and being mean's fun. But
it sure is.
But I care a lot about everyone sort of cracking their hearts open a little bit in a process, and taking care of each other in a process. So, I that's a really squishy way to say it.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect way to say it, and you should have no regret about saying that. But I remember being an actor a long time ago, and I remember any director that I'd ever worked with who I loved so much had spent time as an actor, so they knew how to talk me down off, the 83rd floor of the building, which I was going to jump out of because it wasn't working. And you seem, at least the way you're talking to us, you seem to, you handle your actors, I'm sure, with such care and love, that you build that trust, which
Yeah.
is so important between an actor and a director, is trust.
Yes, and here's another thing, because I do, and it's funny. I'm also a mom, and that
Okay, next
can
question.
lend itself a little bit to the skills of a director. But I've said a couple of times on shows, like, I'm not
Take
their
a shower.
well, yes. No, I'm not their mom. It's like, I
Right.
actually don't
Right.
love you
Right.
unconditionally. I am very closely. So you know what I mean? Like, there are limits, and we actually talked a bit in Kimberly as we were starting out, like, how we want to refer to ourselves, and we were starting to say we're a family, and it was like, actually, no, we're just a company, because
Yeah.
families you actually can't get out of, and we're a company, and we're professionals, and we're so I do think that a necessary part of what we do is there's discomfort. You are traveling uncomfortable waters. There are actors that are uncomfortable with rage. There are actors that are uncomfortable being unlikable. There are actors that are uncomfortable being sexy, not being sexy, not,
Yeah.
like, there are 1,000. We all bring ourselves to it, and we all have our
Our thing, right?
blind spots. Everyone has the right to be safe in the process, but that doesn't mean you're not going to be uncomfortable. And so it's, I do think that some of process it's birth, you know. So there are moments that are ugly and humbling, and there are mistakes, and there are miscommunications, and there's all of that is there in a room, and that's actually good. That's actually that friction. If handled, if the fallout is respectful, if there is safety, is necessary and ultimately fruitful. So I don't mean to suggest that, I nurse all of my actors. It's gross, really gross.
I'm curious. I
Very funny.
I asked another parent this the other day, but I'm just wondering, as a parent, like, what has been the most surprising thing to you about raising people? Like, is there something that you're like, I never in a million years would have thought it would have been this, or this has completely surprised me about it? Is there anything that you can go,
Well, it's humbling. It's humbling. First of all, well, I never thought I would be a morning person, and now I totally am. I never thought I would have the patience, that I found that I have, as a result of raising kids. But it's humbling, and your skill set, your specialties have to keep changing. First it's like, I just have to be good about knowing what schedule we're on in terms of giving plums versus peas versus rice cereal. Like, now I'm figuring out, I'm sitting in these tiny little chairs in a kindergarten class and talking to a teacher about whether or not my kid, can count or whatever it is.
Right.
And then the problems get more interesting and complicated. And suddenly there's a point where your kids then look at you and see you and might call you out on something, and they might be right.
Mm. Hmm.
It's humbling because development is really messy. And
Oof.
so your kid might do something just bonkers. And you're just like, am I raising a serial killer? And you just guide and you love and you listen and it's so much listening. You can't, if you're only chatting at your kid, you're sunk.
Yeah.
It's listening. So I think that's the most surprising.
It's
And I bet
so
it,
many
I bet
surprises.
it, I bet it helped a lot with Kimberly Akimbo having two teenagers that are, a little younger than the other ones are supposed to play. But I
Oh.
bet raising two boys and then putting that on stage was very helpful for you.
Super helpful.
I
Super helpful.
bet.
And Vicky and I had a moment. This actually happened at the Atlantic, and it's still something that we navigate because it's a very easy trap to fall in.
Yeah.
Where I said, I think Kim is seeming too young. She's almost seeming like she's 5 or 7 instead of a teen, because Vicky was just boisterous and jumping and,
Right.
and I was like, I'm looking at my own teens and they are so still because they don't want to seem uncool. They're like, they're so still. And so we were just talking about what that means, like what that teen physicality means. And there still can be, teens are a little bit like you see your 4-year-old, but it just went boop, and then so it's like,
Stretched. Yeah.
capture that youth and still that it's very specific physicality, that teen world. So, and we still navigate it. Just the other night, I went to see the show and I was like, we're starting to veer toward 5-year-old Kim, get her back to 15,
Yeah.
very easy trap to fall into. And she's always so game and she always knows it and knows how to tweak it,
I want to talk a little bit about a little advocacy. I know how important it is to you for mentoring young theater artists, and but I think I like this thing of your work or your being on your sandbox about unregistered people and the low propensity voters to get out and participate in our voting system and in our democracy.
Yeah.
That, as I'm talking to you about it, you are lighting up because it seems to me that it's something that is so important to you.
It's really important to me. And
And I think it goes hand in hand with mentoring young artists. Yeah.
and with discussion, and with uncomfortable discussion,
Yeah.
because we often get into our little, echo chambers and we only talk with each other.
Yeah.
And what are we really learning and what are we really debating? And over the years, I have worked with Vote Forward. But is each election, even each midterm, each special election, I write letters and send them out to, voters to people to encourage them to register. And I've done a lot of phone banking each election, because it's important to keep talking. And even if it's uncomfortable, it's important to keep talking. And so, and I was, especially during the pandemic when we had so much time in our hands. I mean, so there were, I wrote hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters, and sent them to Georgia, but sent them to Georgia and Texas and,
Well, talk a little bit more about that. So, I mean, I think the idea of letter writing, which, is a lost art anyway, but the idea of letter writing to our senators, to the people that work in, for us, I think that's very important, that letter writing. Tell me a little bit more about who you're sending them to, and how easy it is to do something like this.
It's actually, Vote Forward is amazing because they really give you, if you feel self-conscious about your own words, and I still do, they'll give you a sort of prototype.
Like a template, right?
Yes, they'll give you a template, and they give you lists of these people. Some of them are there are different campaigns. Some is encouraging people to register and actually helping people to register. Some is, in the 2020 election, I spent most of my time writing letters to people who were registered. They just didn't always show up. They were just inconsistent voters. And so they were letters reminding them how important it is to participate. And honestly, there's not necessarily, with this one, you're not necessarily saying vote for my candidate who I love. You're just saying vote. Pay attention and vote.
Participate.
And and here's the information that you need to make sure that you are registered. Or here's so I love Vote Forward. And I actually really loved phone banking. But that's scary. That can be scary because you are talking to people who don't necessarily agree. Some of them might be, mad. But it's about the conversation. And typically that is done, especially with an organization like, Swing Left or Vote Forward. Right. They will find the voters that lean in a direction that you're sort of in, and so you're not necessarily like, if I'm a blue voter, I'm not necessarily calling the deep reddest district,
right,
which could be an ugly conversation,
right,
traumatic,
which could lead to a bad situation.
Correct, but there are names of voters that tend to be. Let's say, that wherever it is, I'm just going to say blue, be blue, or that tend to be, moderate and are swing. And so the conversations are interesting and respectful, and they feel important.
That's interesting. When you call people, they're not immediately hanging up. You're getting the opportunity to really,
I was actually really moved by all the people that really wanted to talk.
Wow.
I know.
Did they want to talk about what's going on in the country right now, or if they were going to get out and vote, or a little bit of everything?
They wanted to talk. It was a mix. They wanted to talk about what was going on in the country. They wanted to complain. Some felt shame for voting one way and wanting to make sure they voted another. Some, there were a lot of different conversations. And most of them were respectful.
That's cool.
And I feel embarrassed to even, I have loved it and really do. I do this especially for every election, but there are people who work so much harder than I do on this. There are, it's meaningful to me. It's meaningful as an example to my boys. They always come with us to vote, but there are so many people who work so much harder.
I think there's something important, though, as artists to remember, that we must live a life and we must participate in things that are important to us outside of our art. And so I think that's just another example of that, because you have to have a life in order to bring something to the art.
Yes.
And what I'm curious about is, now you're directing on Broadway. Like, you've had all of these experiences in the arts and in theater and performing and directing. Is there what's the next thing that you're like, I wonder what it would be like to do that, or to do, what's the next mountain that you want to start climbing, as you're also like doing this incredible Broadway career?
Well, you mean in the arts or just as a human?
Both.
That's a great question. That's a great question. Currently I feel like I feel pretty saturated with, going from Kimberly into Water for Elephants and having these two teens that I want to, help launch them happily into the world. And that feels like a really full plate.
Yeah.
In terms of storytelling, I'm sort of itching to do a play again.
Okay.
I'm sort of, not to be in one. Oh God, no.
Oh, to direct. So
no. But to direct a play, and I would miss the collaboration with a composer, but I'm sort of itching to get my hands on a play.
Is there an
So
action film or a TV sitcom in there somewhere?
I mean, if the boys are going to college, I guess I should probably start training my eyes on TV and film.
Yeah.
It's not as, again, theater's all about language, and I just love language. So it's not as compelling to me.
So we can go back to what we were talking about before we even started was maybe that play is House of Blue Leaves. It's been
Marriage of Bet and Boo.
30 years. Marriage of Bet and Boo. Yeah.
House of Blue Leaves is a great idea.
Yeah.
Coming to Broadway in 2025. Putting it out there.
Wait, I got to get my headshot ready. Hold on. I have a quote here. From you that I'd love to read. I thought it was so beautiful. I love things that catch you by surprise. It's a great driver of success and a word of mouth. I think that audience love when they come in thinking a show is going to be one thing and it ends up delivering more and different than they expect.
I said that? When did I say that?
Yes, ma'am. I pulled it off of an interview that you did.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it's true. I have a new love, and it's not as articulate. I'm kind of not believing that I said what you just said, but I guess I did. But I have a new love, which is I went to see our show the other day to check in, and when they finished Great Adventure and the lights went out, the audience went, oh, like collectively, the entire audience sort of exhaled, and I started crying. I was like, well,
of course,
there's no better feeling than that. There is no better feeling than that, than feeling like an audience was watching a show, sort of holding their breath as they were experiencing it, and then they just exhaled. Like
they exhaled.
Yeah.
And it's a positivity leaving that theater. You're not, in my opinion, you're not thinking about, oh, maybe Kimberly only has, another year or two or et cetera. But there's a real positivity and a real sense of happiness and seize the moment. When I left that theater, people were smiling and happy and singing. And first of all, I love the Atlantic Theater Company because it's in that little tiny theater. And then you can either go left or right down the street. And I remember a group of people just kind of linking arms and skipping down the street after seeing the show. And that's how I felt. It was a real, euphoria feeling.
Yeah.
And I'm Tuesday night, I'm coming again to
Broadway.
Good. And I can't wait to see this in a larger capacity. I cannot wait.
Like it. Well, we were worried, it's like you don't want to break it as you move it to a bigger space. And so we all, David and Janine, but also I and the designers and David Zinn. I mean, we were very, we took a lot of care with how do we fill that space.
I bet,
keep it as it's quirky, weird, little crunchy, like Swiss Army knife design. Like how do we hang on to its?
How do you keep the intimacy of it? Yeah.
And it has to feel a little bit, it's life and it's imperfect. So if it's slick, that's not right. That's not life. Life is bumpy.
Right.
So yeah. Oh,
I can't wait. We wish you all the love and luck and everything. And what you've put up on that stage with this show is extraordinary. And thank you for it.
Oh, thank you so much. It was what a nice way to spend a Monday night.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It was nice talking with you.
Yeah, it was incredible. Will you be there Tuesday? I'll look for you.
I will not be there Tuesday. I may be there Wednesday.
All right. Well, maybe I'll come Wednesday because I want to make that sound at the end. with everyone.
And make me cry again.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, that is our show, ladies and gentlemen. John and I thank you from the bottom of our hearts, Jessica.
Thank you.
You are
Such a pleasure.
yeah, you are the face of the new theater, and it's great to see. And I love that it's a woman. That is our show. We have some fantastic guests lined up for 2023 and are very close to being able to announce them. As always, more information about our future guests, as well as how to attend our recordings online, can be found on our website, liveathelortel.com. So keep checking our website and social media as those announcements are imminent. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming tonight. Please stay safe. Go see a show. Go see Kimberly Akimbo. It will break your heart in a million pieces and make you laugh and cry. It's a magnificent piece of theater. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you, John Andrew, my love. Have a great last week of Strange Loop. And Jessica, thank you so much. You're an angel.
Have a great night.
You too. Our best to Christopher.
Oh, yes, I'll send it.